The sample was 400 million years old, fossilized in crystalline amber, sealed beneath a colony that had no idea what it was standing on. And when Elara Voss cracked the seal, it started growing. Widow's Peak clung to the ridge like a barnacle on a sinking hull. 312 souls, give or take the ones they'd lost that quarter. Below the colony, the pallor sea churned, a vast ocean of bioluminescent fog that crawled up the basalt cliffs every evening, glowing blue-green, gorgeous, and absolutely lethal. Elara hadn't slept in 31 hours. Her conservatory, a greenhouse wedged into a cave mouth at the ridge's northern edge, smelled of copper and wet chlorophyll. Hydroponic arrays hummed under grow lights. Verithian moss pulsed faintly in its tray, that eerie bioluminescence it shared with everything on this planet. Beautiful, alien, useless against the wasting.
3 more in the mending hall this morning. Fenterish can't hold a spoon anymore.
Callum Oren stood in the doorway, sandy hair plastered flat from the wind. He was 27 and looked 40. The wasting did that, ate the neural tissue first, then the coordination, then the memory. His hands trembled when he set the sample tray down, and Elara noticed. She always noticed. She didn't say anything. Callum's cough had started 3 months ago. A persistent rasp he tried to bury in his sleeve when he thought she wasn't paying attention. But Elara read symptoms the way archaeologists read pottery shards. Every crack told a story, and his story was getting shorter. He nodded, didn't argue. That was Callum, loyal past the point of self-preservation. He'd follow her into the pallor sea if she asked, and she'd spent 2 years making sure she never would. The fissure appeared at 1640 that afternoon. No warning, just a grinding sound from the conservatory floor, a crack splitting the stone like a fault line, and a breath of cold air rising from below. Air that smelled of petrichor and something older. Something vegetal and impossibly ancient. Elara was on her knees at the edge before the dust settled. Her headlamp cut a yellow cone into the dark. The fissure dropped maybe 4 meters into a chamber she'd never seen on any geological survey. Crystalline walls caught the light, faceted, reflective, humming at a frequency she couldn't hear but felt in her sternum.
Elara, that's not natural rock. Those are structures. Someone built that.
He was right. The walls weren't geological formations. They were architecture. Grown, not carved. Crystalline lattices shaped with biological precision over timescales that made human civilization look like a sneeze. She rappelled down on a maintenance cable before Callum could finish his sentence.
The orchid extract, potent.
The Undercroft. That's what she'd call it later, when the name had weight. For now, it was just a cathedral of crystal and silence. Every surface hummed. 17 hertz, she'd measure later, just below the threshold of human hearing. The frequency sat in her bones like a second heartbeat. The deepest chamber held the formula. Not written, grown. Botanical instructions encoded in crystalline growth patterns across the walls. Molecular diagrams rendered in mineral lattice. Reaction sequences mapped in the branching patterns of preserved root systems. 400 million years old. And perfectly legible to anyone who spoke the language of xenobotany. Elara spoke it fluently. Her hands, green-stained from years of handling Verithian flora, reached toward the nearest crystalline specimen case. The amber seal was warm, warmer than the chamber air, warmer than it had any right to be, after 400 million years. She pressed her thumb against it, and the seal dissolved. The sample inside unfolded, pale tendrils reaching toward the light of her headlamp like fingers stretching after an impossible sleep. Crystalline pollen drifted upward, catching the light, spinning in patterns too organized to be random. Around the chamber, one by one, then all at once, every preserved specimen began to bloom. 400 million years of dormancy ended in the space of a single breath. The undercroft filled with light, with color, with the soft, unmistakable sound of things growing. And somewhere beneath the humming, a whisper. Just beneath the threshold of understanding. Elara's hands were shaking. Not from fear, from recognition. She knew this feeling. The feeling of standing at the edge of something that could change everything. Her mother had felt it too, once. Her mother, who'd come to Vareth to heal a colony and ended up in the mending hall herself. Bed 14. The one they kept empty now, out of a respect nobody talked about. Elara wiped her palms on her coat. The green stain was darker than usual. She didn't notice. Not yet. It took Elara 9 days to decode the formula. 9 days of barely eating, sleeping in the conservatory chair, waking with crystalline pollen in her hair, and that 17 hertz hum lodged permanently in her chest. The ingredients were all Varithian. Pallid orchid extract, bioluminescent moss filtrate, a mineral compound from the crystalline walls themselves, and something she could only describe as rendered intention, a biological catalyst that didn't match any known chemistry. It shouldn't have worked. It worked anyway. The molecular bonding it's not chemical, it's architectural. The brew doesn't react with neural tissue, it replaces the damaged scaffolding, like a living bandage made of crystal. The first batch filled a single glass flask. Amber liquid, faintly luminescent, warm to the touch. It smelled like the undercroft, petrichor and deep thyme, and something almost sweet, the way fruit smells just before it turns. Dr. Sonia Pell stood at the mending hall's entrance with her arms crossed and her jaw set. Short-cropped silver hair, steady hands, eyes that had watched 11 colonists waste away that year alone.
You want to inject an untested alien compound into a de-eyeing man, based on instructions you found in ruins that are older than complex life on Earth.
Fentarish has maybe 2 weeks left. He can't feed himself. He can't recognize...
Sonia didn't have an answer for that. Nobody did. The wasting didn't negotiate.
Have an answer for that?
And nobody did.
Fentarish was 63 and weighed less than his granddaughter. His eyes were open but empty. The neural erosion had taken his recognition months ago. Elara administered the brew intravenously, 0.5 milliliters. The flask was warm in her green-stained fingers. By morning, Finn could hold a spoon. By the second day, he recognized his daughter's face. By the third day, he walked to the observation platform and watched the Pallor Sea churn below, tears streaming down a face that had been blank for half a year. The colony ignited. Superintendent Eris Marin, iron-haired, pragmatic, running on caffeine and desperation, was at Elara's conservatory door before the week ended. Elara brewed, batch after batch. The undercroft specimens regenerated faster than she harvested them, as if the ancient biology wanted to be used, wanted to be consumed, wanted to flow into human veins. She worked through the nights, Callum beside her, grinding orchid roots with shaking hands, that cough punctuating the silence every few minutes like a clock running down. By the third week, 22 colonists had received the brew. 22 recoveries. Not a single complication. Sonia ran tests, blood panels, neural scans, cognitive assessments. Everything came back clean. Better than clean. The healed patients showed neural density above baseline, sharper reflexes, improved memory. Too good. Sonia said it first.
Elara, these numbers don't make sense. The brew isn't just repairing damage, it's improving the architecture. Neural pathways that were never there before. Where is the new tissue coming from?
Elara rationalized. Regenerative medicine always exceeded baseline in animal trials. The body overcompensates when given the right tools. That's how healing works. The brew was simply more efficient than anything humans had designed, because it had 400 million years of evolutionary refinement behind it. She told herself that. Standing in the undercroft at 2 a.m, studying the crystalline murals she'd been cataloging, they showed the Verithians, tall, slender figures rendered in mineral relief. The murals told a story. She'd been reading it like an archaeologist reads a tomb wall, left to right, top to bottom, civilization to collapse.
No.
Panel 1,
They're gone.
Verithians tending gardens. Panel 2, Verithians brewing. Panel 3, Verithians drinking. Panel 4, Verithians entering pools of the formula, willingly, arms outstretched, faces tilted upward in what looked like ecstasy. Panel 5 was empty. No Verithians at all. Just the gardens. Growing. She should have stopped there. Any archaeologist worth their dig would have recognized the pattern, the civilization that vanishes into its own creation, the great filter, the silence at the end of every ruin she'd ever studied vicariously through the xenoarchaeological databases. But Elara wasn't reading ruins anymore. She was living one, and the patients needed more brew, and Callum's cough was getting worse, and Eris was knocking on her door. Again. That evening, Sonia pulled her aside in the mending hall corridor. Her voice was flat, clinical. The voice doctors use when the diagnosis is bad.
Look at Fenterish's eyes. Look. See Osley. Oh, God. No.
Elara looked. In the dim light of the mending hall, she'd missed it. But in the corridor's harsh fluorescence, there, in the center of Fenn's irises, a faint luminescence, blue-green, bioluminescent, the same glow as the pallor sea, as the moss, as everything on this planet that wasn't human. Fenn smiled at her as she stared. He looked healthy, happy, better than he'd been in years, and his eyes glowed with the light of something that had been waiting 400 million years to find a new host. Elara pulled every remaining dose from the mending hall at midnight, locked them in the conservatory's cold storage, changed the access code. Hands shaking, those green-stained hands, the stain darker now, spreading past her wrists like a bruise made of chlorophyll. She filed a suspension report with Eris Marin at 0600. Treatment paused pending further analysis. The words sounded responsible, scientific, measured. Eris's response was none of those things.
Someone is saying to you.
I cannot believe this. You signed this.
Yes! And I stand by it! I understand the implications, but this report is unacceptable.
Elara didn't have a good answer. Not one that would outweigh a grandfather holding his granddaughter's hand for the first time in 8 months. Power doesn't corrupt through grand gestures. It corrupts through the small mercies you can't argue against. Three days later, the first structural changes appeared. Not in the eyes anymore. Deeper. Sonia's neural scans showed crystalline formations developing along the patient's brain stems, microscopic, organized, identical in structure to the undercroft's walls. The healed patients weren't just carrying Verithian biology in their irises, they were growing it in their skulls.
The neural tissue isn't being repaired, Elara. It's being transcribed. The brew is copying the patient's neural patterns into a crystalline substrate, and then the original tissue dissolves. Willingly. Like it's stepping aside to make room.
22 patients, all showing the same progression, all feeling better. That was the cruel genius of it. The corruption felt like salvation. Elara descended into the undercroft alone, past the formula chamber, deeper than she'd gone before, following the humming, louder now, no longer sub-audible, but a clear, resonant tone that vibrated in her teeth. The crystalline walls brightened as she approached, as if they recognized her, as if they'd been waiting. The deepest chamber was vast, cathedral scale, and it wasn't empty. Roots. Enormous crystalline root systems filling the chamber from floor to ceiling, interconnected, pulsing with bioluminescent fluid, and woven into the roots, preserved perfectly, faces peaceful, bodies intact. Verithians. Hundreds of them, not buried, not entombed, integrated. Their biology and the roots' biology, indistinguishable, merged. They hadn't vanished. They hadn't gone extinct. They'd been right here for 400 million years. Part of the planet, part of the roots, part of the brew. The whisper she'd heard that first day, the one just below understanding, rose to clarity. Not words, intention. Pressed into her mind through the 17 hertz hum, through the crystalline walls, through the green stain on her hands that was, she understood now, not a stain at all. It was an interface.
You're still alive, all of you.
The roots pulsed, once. An acknowledgement, an invitation. The presence didn't argue or threaten. It simply showed her. Memories cascading through the crystalline interface, a civilization's final chapter, played in sensory impressions rather than language. The Verithians hadn't been consumed, they'd chosen. Their biology was failing, a degenerative condition eerily parallel to the wasting, and the planet's own intelligence had offered merger, integration, transcendence, from their perspective. Elara ripped her hands from the wall. Skin tore. Green fluid, not blood, not quite, welled from the scrapes. She stared at it, at the color, at what her hands had been becoming for weeks while she told herself it was just a stain. She scrambled back through the tunnels, up the fissure, into the conservatory where Callum was waiting. Callum was waiting. Standing at the cold storage unit, door open, an empty flask in his hand, amber residue on his lip. His eyes were already changing. She wanted to scream. She wanted to grab the flask and shatter it. But Callum's face, that kind, gaunt face she'd been trying to save for 2 years, was looking at her with something worse than defiance. Trust. He trusted her work. He trusted the brew. He trusted that whatever it did to him couldn't be worse than what the wasting was already doing. The green in his irises caught the conservatory's grow lights. A faint shimmer. Blue-green. Verithian. And somewhere beneath the colony, the 17 hertz hum grew louder. Pleased. Patient. 400 million years patient, and now, finally, with 23 human minds beginning to crystallize, getting exactly what it wanted. Elara had 6 hours, maybe less. Sonia's scan showed the crystalline conversion accelerated exponentially once it passed the brainstem, moving from substrate to superstructure, replacing neural pathways with mineral lattice at a rate that would complete full integration within half a day. 23 colonists, including Callum, 6 hours before they stopped being human and became something else. Something the Undercroft had been building towards since before complex life existed on Earth.
There's no reversal protocol. The original neural tissue is already dissolved in most patients. There's nothing left to restore. Elara, there's nothing to save.
Elara didn't accept that. Wouldn't. She descended into the Undercroft for the last time, hands bleeding green, the hum so loud it rattled the sample jars on her belt. The crystalline walls blazed with light at her approach, welcoming, eager, the ancient intelligence reaching for her through every surface. She went deeper than the formula chamber, deeper than the cathedral of merged Verithians, past roots thick as corridor walls, pulsing with 400 million years of accumulated consciousness, into the core, the biological heart of the system. A single massive organism, part plant, part crystal, part something that didn't have a human word. It filled a cavern the size of the colony above. Bioluminescent fluids circulated through it in visible currents, carrying information, carrying memory, carrying the entire preserved consciousness of a species that had traded bodies for eternity. The presence spoke to her here. Not in whispers, in full clarity, pressed through the interface of her green-stained skin, her compromised cellular walls, the weeks of contact that had made her compatible. It offered her a choice. The brew could be calibrated, modified. The current formula integrated completely, full conversion, total merger. The human mind preserved, but the body rewritten. The Verithian template. But a different formula, one requiring a biological translator, a living bridge between human and Verithian chemistry, could stop the process at the neural level, repair without replace, heal without consume.
It is time.
The catch. There was always a catch with power. The translator had to be a person, had to drink the full formula, accept complete integration, and then serve as the biological interface through which the modified brew could flow. A permanent conduit. No longer fully human, no longer Verithian, something in between, tethered to the Undercross root system for life. Elara looked at her hands. The green wasn't a stain anymore. It was her. Weeks of exposure had already begun the process. Her cells were half converted, her skin semi-crystalline under the surface. She was closer to the threshold than anyone. The conversion would be quick.
Will they remember who they were? The colonists. Callum. Will they still be themselves?
The presence showed her the answer. Images of the modified patients. Human faces, human memories, human lives. The crystalline substrate would remain in their neural tissue, but dormant. Structural support, nothing more. No merger, no transformation, no glowing eyes. The wasting cured, humanity preserved, at the cost of one person's humanity. Elara Voss, xenobotanist, colony herbalist, daughter of a healer who'd given everything to this ridge, sat down on the chamber floor. Cool crystal beneath her, the hum in her bones, indistinguishable from her own pulse now. She drank. Not the modified brew, the original, full concentration. She felt it bloom through her bloodstream, warm, then hot, then something beyond temperature. Her neural pathways lighting up like the walls around her, her vision shifting. She could see the bioluminescent spectrum now, ultraviolet edges bleeding into everything, the roots glowing like rivers of liquid thought. The conversion took 3 minutes, she counted. Each second, a room in her mind opening its doors to something vast and ancient and achingly beautiful. Each second, something small, and specifically Elara, closing its doors for the last time. The taste of coffee, gone. The memory of her mother's voice, not gone, but translated, stored in crystal instead of chemistry. The same data, a different instrument playing it. She calibrated the brew. Through her body now, through the root system she was part of, she filtered the formula, stripped the reproductive vectors, kept the healing, pushed the modified compound upward through the fissure, through the conservatory floor, into the supplies she'd locked away. Every dose now safe. Every dose now just medicine. Sonia administered the corrected brew within the hour. 22 colonists, Fen Teresh first, received the antidote. The crystalline formations halted, receded. The glow faded from their eyes, like embers cooling. 22 of 23. Callum had drunk the original formula 6 hours ago. The conversion had already passed the threshold. Too far. Too deep. His neural tissue wasn't being replaced anymore. It was gone. The crystal was his mind now. Rolling it back would mean rolling back him. He sat in the conservatory garden 3 days later, alive, conscious, his sandy hair unchanged, his kind face the same face that had stood in her doorway 100 mornings with sample trays and bad news, and that cough that was gone now, along with everything else the wasting had threatened and the brew had taken instead. His eyes glowed steady blue-green. He watched the pallor sea with an expression that wasn't quite wonder and wasn't quite peace. He hummed. 17 hertz. The frequency of the undercroft. The frequency of the roots. The frequency of everything he'd become. He didn't recognize her. Elara tended the conservatory. Her hands, no longer stained green, but composed of it, skin and crystal woven together, capable of interfacing with every plant on the ridge, moved through the hydroponic arrays with a precision that wasn't quite human. The brew flowed through her, modified and safe, keeping the colony alive. The wasting was over. Widow's Peak would survive. She'd saved 311 people. She'd lost one. The one. And she'd lost herself, or the version of herself that could have appreciated what she'd saved. The version that drank coffee and slept badly, and read botanical journals with her feet up, and her green-stained hands wrapped around a warm mug. That version was in the crystal now, alongside the Verithians, alongside 400 million years of accumulated choices made by people who traded what they were for what they could do. Outside, the pallor sea rolled its bioluminescent fog up the cliffs. Callum hummed in the garden. Elara's hands moved through the plants, her plants now, in a way that was more literal than metaphor. And the undercroft hummed beneath them both, patient, satisfied, waiting, as it always waited, for the next species to find the formula and ask the only question that mattered. Is the cost worth the cure?